were in Lewisburg. And they're very good at it. They play the part of someone at that time. And there's a guy, and he was a merchant. And he sat in his little rocking chair with his clay pipe. He told us about his merchant and what his merchandise was. We say, that's really, well, thank you so much. And he goes, yep, love you on Street Legal. And it was like, what? They watched us in the 18th century?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Bram and Bluma Appel Salon at the Toronto Public Library. My name is Yvonne Hunter. I'm the head of programming for the Salon. And tonight we are going to have a conversation between Richard Ouzounian, who is the theatre critic and entertainment writer for the Toronto Star, with Albert Schultz, who is the creative artistic director for Soulpepper Theatre. So I think you're going to have a great time, and I would like to introduce my esteemed colleague, Bob Hepburn from the Toronto Star.
Thanks, Yvonne. I'm waiting for Harper Lee to come. I think she's older than 84. This is our fifth year or sixth year of doing Star Talks at the library. I'm actually glad we're here. This is, as Yvonne says, this is the first one of 2015, and over those years, both the Toronto Public Library and the Toronto Star have been able to survive Rob Ford. He's still around. As Yvonne said, we're sponsoring these talks. Andrew Morton's coming up, but we're also huge supporters of the library and have been for many years. Just today, we've agreed to be media partners for the A-List series of talks, which are throughout various other libraries. Not 100 of them, but quite a few of them around the city. Last summer, we donated to the library more than 1 million photographs of historic Toronto, from our archives to the Toronto Public Library's archives. And for those people who still read newspapers and not just get their news on their tablet or their iPhone or microfiche, in this library, Albert, who still reads on microfiche, I understand. There's the Toronto newspaper reading room. So my role here today is to introduce Richard Ouzounian, who will introduce Albert. I've introduced Richard many, many times over these years, but I still have to keep bringing notes, just so that I don't mix it up. For the past 35 years, Richard has worked professionally in the world of performing arts and arts journalism. In that time, he has written, directed, or acted in more than 225 productions. He served as artistic director of 5 major Canadian theatres and has been an associate director of the Stratford Festival, where, by the way, for the last 3 summers, and again this summer, we do Star Talks right on stage with actors right after performances, and they're huge hits. Richard has taught and or directed at the universities of British Columbia, Simon Fraser, Winnipeg, as well as George Brown and Sheridan Colleges. And since 2000, he's been the chief theatre critic for the Star. But he's also written celebrity profiles. Every Saturday, he does a major profile for us. He's written travel pieces, restaurant reviews. We pay him by the inch. He's also hosted a weekly CBC radio program on musical theatre and served as creative head of arts programming at TV Ontario. And in his spare time, he's also authored 6 books. Toronto Life magazine has referred to Richard as Toronto's most influential critic. I'd go further than that. I'd say he's Canada's most influential critic. Richard Ouzounian.
Thank you, Robert. Tonight is actually a real treat for me. I mean, there's a lot of great parts to my job. I mean, I enjoyed about a month ago being out in Los Angeles and spending an hour in Angela Lansbury's home and having her tell me about her life and her career, and that was pretty nifty, I have to tell you that. I liked going out and seeing Joni Mitchell and talking to her. I like being here and having Brian Dennehy suddenly explode with all these great stories about his acting career that I had never heard. But what I'm doing tonight is something different. I'm hoping to let you get to know better somebody who I think is, first of all, a fascinating and tremendous man, but who has also probably done, in my not so humble opinion, probably the best overall body of work in Toronto theatre in the years I've been a critic here. Now, this doesn't mean I've loved everything. There have been times when Albert has threatened me with decapitation or pouring a jug of water on my head or just punching me out in the corner. But the amazing thing is if we've both gotten older, I don't know if I've gotten mellower and he's gotten better, but I find I like increasingly more and more and more of what Soulpepper Theatre does. I feel it is truly, if you ask me what is Toronto's civic theatre, it's Soulpepper. It's the theater that shows you what we're like, not just by doing plays like Kim's Convenience, which mirror the city so totally, you'd swear that Ince Joy went around with a tape recorder instead of, writing a play. But he also has brought together all kinds of people of all ages, all races, all interests, to fuse together in this giant crucible at the Young Center where they do music, they do cabaret, they do all kinds of events. They have a great project coming up, opening, I believe it's a week from Monday, the Nina Simone Project, where some of the best singers of very different generations are going to look at the work of Nina Simone. They also have a fantastic thing coming back in March called, what's the official American Pie?
Oh, it's just called the American Pie
Songbook, in which they take American Pie, the famous song, and deconstruct it and sing all the songs that it refers to and all the numbers that it's about. It's like the annotated Alice you used to read with Alice in Wonderland. Here you have the American Pie Songbook. And then a great show like Spoon River coming right after that. It's amazing. I love going into the Young Center for the Performing Arts more than any other theater in this city because of what I know is going to be there, which is life and community and creativity. And it's because of the man I'm going to have the pleasure of introducing you to and taking you around his life tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Albert Schultz. So I'm going to take these people and unless they've been devout readers of everything I've written over the years, they'll be hearing some new things about you tonight. If I say one word to you, which I think will help unlock the mystery of Albert Schultz.
Yes.
That word is Penryn.
Ah, yes, Penryn. Half of my family came from Ireland and some from Scotland, and then the Schultz name comes from Prussia. In 1849, as part of the social rebellion in the 1848 and 1849, all the Prussians and what would then become Germans, although Germany didn't yet exist, the liberal Prussians escaped and got out of town and came up. And I just learned recently, I know this is a roundabout answer, but this is stuff that even you don't know, because I want to surprise you too. I learned recently that my great-great-grandfather, Carl Schultz, was born in New Orleans. And that, to me, I'm a big jazz fan, as you know, so this was really cool. So I basically consider myself a New Orleans cat, And then they went up the Mississippi, and if you go up the Mississippi, as you probably know, at a place called Cairo, spelled Cairo, you can take a right and head up the Ohio River, and eventually you hit Pittsburgh. And that's where they settled. The Schultzes and the Kings settled, and they grew up in Pittsburgh. So for generations, my family was American, as was yours, until my great-grandfather, Henry King, summered in Port Hope, found this place called Penryn Park, which was built by a man named Williams, who was a colonel and had been the victor in the Battle of Batoche.
My God.
Yes. And he was from Port Hope, or he went back to Port Hope, settled in Port Hope, and his son built Penryn Park, which was my family's homestead for 100 years, until very sadly, like some sort of Chekhov play, and I can tell you, I can give you some images that will help you understand this, that you'll get, and you will as well. But Penryn Park, in the year that I got married the first time, 1920, 25, I was going to say no. I was 25. I was 25. In 1988, my family, the uncles, got together and sold the cherry orchard. And Penryn Park had very much been my Israel. I mean, Israel being kind of homeland, the place of belonging. And Penryn Park was something that my ancestors, my grandfather, particularly I didn't know my great-grandfather, and I barely knew my grandmother, but I knew her children. My father, as you know, died when I was young. I'm sure you're going to ask me a question about that. Yep. But my father was he was the brilliant student amongst three sisters.
Okay.
And this is a Chekhov reference, folks. And he grew up amongst these three sisters, and I got to know the sisters very well, and the sisters were extraordinary people, and I learned that they got this from their mother, who was an unbelievable welcomer. So one of the things that moved me very much about your introduction is you said at the beginning, you walk in and you're going to feel community, you're going to feel belonging. And your Penryn word has actually hit it right on the head, because I grew up from the very youngest age with, I grew up in privilege. Not outrageous privilege. It would have been very good privilege if I'd only been born a few generations earlier. It sort of whittled out as these things do. But I grew up with plenty of privilege, and I remember this. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. God bless Mommy, Daddy, Grandma, Granddaddy, Grandfather, Emmy, Rosie, Miss Prescott, Nanny, Danny. Now, Rosie, that's literally from, I don't know when the last time I said that, bedtime chat. Rosie, Miss Prescott, Nanny, and Danny. These were, for years, this was part of my, Danny was my grandmother, this terribly generous grandmother. But the prayers that I was taught, of the 30 people I was taught to thank, my aunts and uncles, all my aunts, uncles, and cousins, that was all, just under the carpet, you get them all in. The ones I by name mentioned and was taught by my family to mention, and that was important to me to mention, was Rosie was the family laundress who lived on the family property for 20 years after the family themselves stopped living there, and we just had it as a kind of vacation place. My aunt kept them alive, and when Rosie got too old to live in that house that she lived in until she was too old, she went into Port Hope into an old folks' home, which was paid for by my family, and my aunt would get her groceries every week. And this was Rosie, who worked for her mother and her grandfather years before. Wow. This is Anfisa out of right. The cherry orchard. Miss Prescott was one of my babysitters, and had been a babysitter for 2 generations before. And Nanny was my father's babysitter, who was my babysitter when I was a child, who had been the nanny with the family and would travel in this, they'd go from the south, they'd come up for the summers and this sort of thing. So all this to say that I grew up believing that it was incumbent upon me to make sure that everybody, whatever they bring to the table is theirs, and to make to make whatever I can possibly call my own, or whatever I can make manifest. Whatever I can do with that is not only my duty, but my privilege and my joy to share that with as many as possible. And there's absolutely no question, as I look back over my life, at 51 now, there's absolutely no question that the Young Center and Soulpepper and the values of belonging and community that you talk about, and that I know are very real there, absolutely go back to my grandmother and what she and my aunts taught me in those years, and of course my parents. But my connection to my grandmother was strangely through my aunts, these extraordinary women. So that was Penryn for me, and Penryn. Now, Penryn was sold, and that was a great sadness. And outside, by the way, outside of the main door of the main house was the oldest and largest cherry tree in Ontario, which was the remaining cherry tree of what was originally a cherry orchard that sat in front of the house. And this one tree remained. And it was under that tree that my godfather swears he saw my father the morning after he died standing under that tree, which has become part of the family lore.
Now, you mentioned your dad. I want to tie two things together. think you'll probably recall, it was exactly, this summer will be 10 years ago, you and I sat on the terrace outside of Harborfront.
I remember that, yeah.
Because Albert was about to begin to play Hamlet. And I wanted to talk to him about his life and his background and what led him there. And at the time, I began by saying, Albert, you're always doing so much, you're always in such a hurry. What makes Albert run? What are you racing against? And he told me that night.
Yeah, I was obviously 40, 41 then. And my father died when I was 5, and he was 45. And when something that seminal happens at that point in your life, it leaves an impression, and the impression I was left with was time is short. So the combination of time is short, so do what you can while you do it, and while you're doing it, make sure you do as much as you can for everyone else. I guess that's what I was taught by the time I was very, very young. And I'm 6 years past it, and I'm very glad, and I think my dad would be glad to hear that too. Yes.
Now, but when did this turn into theater, into performing arts? You
Well-
could have been a philanthropist, a doctor, a lawyer.
Oh, I couldn't have been any of those things, Richard.
Too much book learning?
Oh dear, the book learning, the book learning. I'm a dropout. Oh Lord. The microfiche killed me. Around the same time that my father was dying, I guess it was when I was 4, so about a year before my father died, my mother was very involved in local theater in Coburg. And at Victoria Hall in Coburg, which has been beautifully restored and still exists, they did a production of Oliver, in which my mother played Nancy.
Okay.
So at the age of 4, I watched my mother thrown down a set of stairs to her death. Another formative experience in my life. That's why I love the Jacobeans. And but I was absolutely taken with that. Absolutely taken. And you know, you go through these things very often. Look, oh, this poor child, his father's dying, blah blah blah. And he had leukemia, and we knew he was dying, and that was sort of a shadow over things. But you know, that's just your life.
Right.
But that was a kind of ongoing thing, to suddenly see, boom, food, glorious food, and people moving around and dancing was such a incredibly powerful thing.
Was it something that you thought could liberate you from sadness?
I didn't feel sad, honestly. I mean, and that's really important to understand. I didn't have a sad childhood by any means. I had a great sadness in my life. That was, but my mother remarried 4 years later, a man that I adored and who adored me, and I had a very, as you know, I was a troubled teen like everybody else, Richard. But I don't think of those years as the only sadness. Is one when I look back. The sadness of, I mean, here's the irony. I don't even know if I told you this, that in 1988, when I was 23 years old, and my brother Henry, who's now one of the top lawyers in Ottawa, and my cousin David, who is running the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada right now after running big corporations and this sort of thing, the three of us, the three youngest, my brother who was 5 years older, and David who was 3 years older, and me, the three of us approached the uncles and said, we've got a crazy idea, but we think we can make a go of it. We want to start on Penryn Park, which is 113 acres on the lake, with a golf course and a pool and tennis courts and several houses. We said, we want to start an arts colony like the Eugene O'Neill Center. Right. And there were 2 historic theaters in Port Hope we thought we could attach it. I'm telling you, this was a really good idea. The problem was the uncles looked at us, little pishers, and said, how could you do this? You're 23 years old. You want to be we don't even know if you're going to be an actor. Arts colony. So they sold it for a ridiculous amount of money, none of which we see anymore, and it was gone, and now someone's making millions selling strips of my family property. Is heartbreaking. So I look back at that, and I think I get sad about the opportunity lost in that. But that's what drives me to do what I am doing in the city, I think. And now, okay, really cool story. When my father died, his friends, he was a naturalist and a conservationist, and a group that he had started when he died decided to do a tribute to him, and what they wanted to do is something really special. So they bought a piece of virgin forest in Northumberland County, about 20 minutes from Port Hope, up north of Grafton. And they knew, because they had birdwatched in it, and they knew that this was a unique piece of forest. And they bought it in his name and dedicated it. It's now a provincial park called Peters Woods Provincial Park. It's about 10 minutes north of the 401 at Grafton. Go see, gorgeous, beautiful walk through it. And it's a unique piece of land. 3 years ago, and this is my Penryn flip, this is the getting the uncles back. 3 years ago, Leslie and I bought the farm from which that was carved. And so every weekend I walk in that woods.
That's good.
That's
so you
nice.
can get it.
In my father's woods, called Peters Woods, and I walk in his woods. So
I see
we're starting it again.
I see what attracted you to theater. I see why you wanted to do it. Why did you take the particular path you took? That road that I first encountered you was at Stratford. So.
Yeah, well, so the story is my mother. So then my mother gets remarried, and we go. My stepfather gets a job. We go out to Calgary. So I spent about my formative years, 12 to 20, in Calgary, or outside of Calgary. And while out there, I discover I have a godfather that I mentioned earlier, this formative godfather, amazing character, who introduced me to so many things, brought me here and showed me the Audubons in this space, introduced me to Shakespeare, introduced me to jazz, introduced me to Mabel Mercer, hugely formative character, took me to my first play. It was The Dead of Winter by Paul Gross with Stuart Hughes and Jackie Burroughs in it. Okay. That was the first professional play I saw in Toronto. He took me to my first opera. It was Strauss's Electra. He was this amazing character. His name was Ron Gashin. He's someone that history books will never record, but had a major influence on so many people that were lucky enough to be in his sphere. And I would come from Alberta to Toronto and stay with him in his apartment, and he would sit cross-legged on the floor, smoking like a chimney with a big glass of scotch, and he would say, "Albert, pull down that book over there, pull down that book." And I'd pull down the book, and he'd say, "Turn to such and such, and read me Enobarbi's Barge, read me the Barge." And I was 15 years old, and I would read this thing, and he'd say, "Wonderful, wonderful, now read." Then he said, "Now I want to play you something." And he played me John Gielgud's Ages of Man Shakespeare records. And I went, "Ah." And then he'd say, "Now read me Queen Mab." And this is before I'd read Shakespeare plays outside of school. And I then got completely into them through him, through listening to the Gielgud, through reading to my godfather, and then going back to school. And I had a wonderful high school teacher who had public readings, and I would get up and perform Shakespeare, and I was good at it. And I was good at it because the chapter I've missed is that when we left Port Hope after my father died and went to Napanee, I joined an Anglican choir. And I spent 3 days a week at the feet of the King James Bible and Cranmer's Book of Common Prayer. "Lighten our darkness, we beseech thee, O Lord, and by thy great mercies defend us from the perils and dangers of this night." You know, this kinds of things that you're learning we would get, and we would be taught this evensong poem. And were you an Episcopalian growing up? No.
Roman Catholic.
Roman Catholic, okay. So I grew up under this Anglican liturgy. And of course, as we know, the King James Bible is published in 1611, and it's written in 20 years leading up to that time. Well, who writes their last play in 1611 and spends the previous 20 years writing plays? It's absolutely steeped in that language. So when I, as a teenager, ran into Shakespeare, I had spent 3 days a week from the time I was 6 saying this stuff, and it just was like, everyone around me was like, "Whoa, how can you do that?" And it was just what you did.
Right.
If you were one of those badass Anglicans.
So how did you get to Stratford from there?
Well, first of all, you aspire to it, and you aspire to it because you pick up in your parents' library in Okotoks, you pick up Grant MacDonald, was that his name? The Renown at Stratford.
Yep.
Robertson Davies does the intros, and Grant MacDonald, I think was his name, did these amazing drawings of people like William Hutt and Roland Bull and Don Heron, and all of them with nouns for names, and except for one, Bruno Gerussi. And all these, and you think, wow, and you see all these these faces, people, Franny Highland and Douglas Rain, and all of these people that later in my life, either as an artist or as a celebrant from the other side, many of these people I saw, and some, I'm going to be helping to eulogize Don Herron next week. So my life has gone from, as a teenager, then coming and realizing this guy's established, and then getting to know him a little bit, and then, so I've been very blessed that way. But those books made me realize that it wasn't just John Gielgud in England that you could aspire to. There was a place called Stratford. And so that's where it begins, and then I come back and I go to the York University, and then what I really wanted to do with was classics. So I headed off. I like to say, I decided to leave York University. I was kicked out, folks. I couldn't, it was the book learning, Richard. It was the book learning. And so I left and I went to England and I studied for a year at LAMDA, London Academy of Music Dramatic Arts, and I studied specifically Shakespeare. And I came back and started auditioning, and within a very short time of my arrival, there was big news in town. You remember this, because the man was coming back. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So after a kind of self-imposed exile, or he ran himself into the ground, his kidneys failed, and he was working too hard, who knows what it was, the man who I had grown up with, I had not seen any of those great years, but everyone had told me that the Robin Phillips years at Stratford were extraordinary, and that Robin Phillips was the gold standard, as he was, of Shakespeare production. That he had brought Maggie Smith and Peter Ustinov and Brian Bedford into Canada. He had revived the careers and reignited the careers of William Hutt and Martha Henry, etc. That this was the man. And he'd gone to the Grand in London when I was in university, and I came back from school, and it was announced a couple of years later, in the fall of 1986, Stratford announced they were doing a young company, and Robin Phillips was coming back to work in the Tom Patterson Theatre at Stratford to do a young company, and he was going to do 2 plays which I had heard of for sure, and 1 play I didn't know what it was. The plays that I had heard of were Romeo and Juliet and As You Like It. The other play I hadn't heard of. The other play was called Journey's End. Whatever. But Romeo and Juliet. So there was a big nationwide, he went across the country and he saw everybody. And of course, everybody wanted to be in this company. And there were 13 of us. William Webster and Butch Blake were brought in as senior members. And then 13 of us, God love him, God rest his soul. Pete Donaldson was one of those. Richard March was one of those. John Ormerod were one of those 3 that left us way too early. But also Nancy Pauck and Susan Coyne and Stuart Hughes and names, Michael Hanrahan, and names that you're going to see on the letterhead of Soulpepper years later. Robin Phillips does this, and we all get in, and I get cast as Touchstone and As You Like It, and Romeo. Romeo at Stratford. Okay, you ready? See if you can help me with this. Romeo at Stratford. I'm going to go back. Bruno Gerussi.
Right.
I think that's the first.
Yep.
Christopher Walken.
Yes.
Is the second. After Christopher Walken, we go to, am I going to miss anyone? We go to Richard Manette and Jack Weatherall.
Right.
Were they splitting, or was it Richard and Nicky?
Richard and
Nicky
Nicky
Pinnell.
Yep.
Richard Manette and Nicky Pinnell. Had there been any in between? I don't think so. From Richard and Nicky, we go to maybe Calm Fior.
Yep.
And from Calm Fior, I mentioned Bruno. So Bruno, and then from Calm Fior, and I was the next. Right. So this was at 23. This was pretty heady stuff. Funnily enough, I was thinking about this. Across the street here, there was a place called the Rosedale Diner, was it? Is it still there? It used to be right here, didn't it? Or there was another one. It wasn't the Rosedale, it was another one. It was right here. And there was a gal who'd started in the business around that time who'd also applied. And everyone, when you audition for a really big job, you have to keep it under if you get it, like you're all playing a game. So did you hear? No, well, maybe, well, whatever. And everyone wanted this job. Everyone wanted this job. It was Robin Phillips was coming back to Stratford, and they were doing Romeo. Oh my God, everyone wanted this job. And once you got the job, you really, really wanted to play Romeo and Juliet. Journey's End. I don't even know what that is. Romeo and Juliet. So my pal, all right, someone I had gotten to know, no romance whatsoever. She had actually been in a relationship with a friend of mine in high school. But I heard that my friend Susan Coyne had also auditioned, and we got together for lunch and played the kind of, so have you heard? Well, yeah, no, kind of.
Yeah.
Really? Who are you? Yeah, well, no, I think they want me. I think they want me. Oh, really? All right. What about you? Because, thinking, poor thing, you probably didn't. Yeah, no, they want me. Yeah. Okay, good. Have you got casting? I think maybe they've given casting. I don't know. Maybe casting. So, who are you playing? Well, I don't know. I'm playing, Touchstone, and oh yeah, I'm playing Phoebe in that. Oh yeah, great. Oh, fantastic. That's great. Well, and Romeo. I'm playing Juliet, and that's and that began, our association. We're still friends, though not married, but we do have a beautiful son and daughter. Our son Capulet and our lovely daughter Montague.
I love something. You're still talking about the old days when people say, oh, I got cast in this. There's a phrase you probably heard the younger generation now use. They say, oh, yeah, I booked that.
I booked that.
I booked that. It's not an airline reservation on Travelocity. It's a part at Stratford. You don't book it. But
no, you get cast, darling. You get cast.
Now, I remember I saw that show. It was magic. And being in that company was magical for all of you. Was it like, was it Eden?
It really was. It was really something, it was something extraordinary. Robin was, particularly that first year, Robin was on fire. He hadn't been working for a while. He was on fire. He was given a kind of fiefdom of his own. He was over in the Tom Patterson, and we just worked away. He had these young, eager people. And that was just the first year. I found out also, by the way, that the other show, Journey's End, I was cast as the character Stanhope, whatever that means. And then I went and read that it's only when Laurence Olivier was interviewed in his 80s, he named 3 parts as the greatest parts he ever played. And one of them was Stanhope. Stanhope is, this is the great anti-war play, the great First World War play, and Stanhope is the great hero. There's a Paddy Creen story if you think of it on that. Back to your question, the company. So, Robin was on fire. We had these amazing plays. I mean, to be able to do, at that age, for me, 23 years old, to play Romeo, and then play Touchstone, and then play Stand Up and Journey's End with Robin Phillips, surrounded by these people that would become my dearest collaborators and many of my dearest collaborators and friends to this day. That's where I met Nancy Pauck there. I didn't meet Stu Hughes, but that was the first time we really worked together there, and Susan and so many, and so it was an extraordinary time. And folks like you, although you weren't writing in those.
No, I was.
That's right.
I was Neville's associate.
That's of course. You were directing there at that time, but. The critics, basically, you will recall what the critics did that year. Those 2 years, they came out and said, if you're going to see anything, go see The Young Company. Which meant that after the 2-year contract, we were booted out. But those are just the politics of the theater.
Now, you've hit on a good point, because I want to steer us into the present, in that there have been 2 great dispossessions in your life, from Penryn and from Stratford.
Right.
My theory is that in creating Soulpepper and making what it is, you are reclaiming the 2 things you lost.
Yeah, maybe in a sense, and neither one of them with any kind of bitterness.
No.
I mean, this is what people for years wanted to believe, that there was some horrible bitterness. There was sadness in both cases. Penryn, obviously sadness. In the Stratford, there was some confused sadness, because we went on after that year to do the year where we did the double bill of Oedipus and the Critic, and we did that extraordinary King Lear with Bill Hutt, the greatest Lear he ever did. I mean, I played Edgar opposite William Hutt, at 24. It was like, come on. And we did a 12th Night as well. And so we did 2 years of extraordinary work that was celebrated everywhere. And then when the time came and all of us thinking, wow, from reading those books back in Okotoks when I was 15 and dreaming, and here I am 9 years later and thinking, now I've made the big time. And not only did we basically didn't even get communicated with. Everyone else got their offers, and everyone in the Young Company got nothing. we just waited till the noise died down, and we packed our bags and put our tail between our legs and headed back to the city. And that was it. That was it. None of us heard, most of us never heard anything for years. When Richard came in after John and after David, and Richard came in, then people started getting, queries back. Susan went back and did that beautiful Portia, and some of us, I got invited back, though couldn't go because of the TV stuff. But so there was a rapprochement. But so there was a sadness about that, and a kind of muddle-headed. Like, how can that happen? How can you take? And this is something that is so important to me, is the training of the next generation, and the creation of opportunities for the next generation. And half of the training is the creation of opportunities, right? You can't just put them in a class and then say, there you go, out you go. You actually have to give them opportunities that stretch them. You have to put them in Edgar opposite William Hutt. You have to give them big, scary, challenging things to do, and things that put them out in the public, and cuddle them while they're there. Like, the organization has to take, this is their future. And so what was so shocking to all of us, and I think to a lot of the world, there was a piece in the Star actually at that point. I remember Bob Crew wrote it saying, where is everybody after that year? Yeah. Everybody was gone, including you. Yeah. You were in that list. Brian McDonald, rest his soul, was in that. There's a whole, everyone gone, including everyone in the Young Company. And that to me was such a betrayal, not of me, but a betrayal of the ideals of what that place had been, and looks like now is again about. And unfortunately, at that time, really, I think serious mistakes were made. But we were then back in the city, all of us with the fire still very much there, and Soulpepper was the result of that.
No, I wanted to do a little more on Soulpepper, but I know if I don't touch on this one aspect, there will be very angry people out there, because I know there are many people who also first came to know and love Albert through Street Legal.
Street Legal, yes. Yes.
Now, I know that's kind of, although he also, let us not forget, this is the man who played Conrad Black on television. You remember doing that too?
Yes.
You've done them all. So Street Legal was amazing with Cynthia and you and Eric and C. David. And I've just blanked the other lady.
Sonia.
Sonia, thank you.
Well, you guys remember Street Legal? Yeah. I mean, the fun thing, the really fun thing about life in general in this business, as you know, is that you come around. You come around and you run into these people. So it's been such a thrill to have Eric back in the family in the last few years, doing Billy Bishop with us and acting with him in Glengarry Glen Ross, and because it had been almost 20 years that we hadn't really worked together. And Cynthia and I haven't worked together since. We were really good pals, but we haven't been able to work together. But C. David is coming back to Soulpepper again this summer to do Plays the Thing. And the reason that's exciting is because those were really, and it's it's not like I think there were the Stratford years, there's Soulpepper, and then there's this. So Street Legal was formative for me. Doing that work at the CBC, becoming part of that family, becoming part of that national, that was a national celebration. There were a lot of people in every community in this country. I'll tell you a very funny story really quickly. This would have been, Julia was about to be born. So this was 1994. Susan was pregnant with Julia. We went to Cape Breton, and we're in Louisburg, at the thing in Louisburg. And if you go into Louisburg, like Old Fort Henry, it's one of these places where everyone, and they're very good at it, they play the part of someone at that time. I'm a butter churner from, and you go in and you have a conversation with them, and in character, they tell you. So we walked in, and in this little town of Louisburg, and we go into this place, and there's a guy, and he was a merchant, and he sat in his little rocking chair with his clay pipe. He told us about his merchant and what his merchandise was, and how many ships he had out last year. And he goes through a 20-minute discussion that we learn a ton about the time, and then we say, that's really, well, thank you so much. And he goes, yep, love you on street legal. And it was like, what? They watched us in the 18th century? Man, TV is cool.
Now, believe it or not, we're getting near the end of our time.
No.
But I know there's a couple of things. Soulpepper has been an amazing organization, but I think that the way that, because I know these people don't know this story, and I love it, is the opening night in the Young Center of the Performing Arts.
Yeah.
When it first opened, and they were reviving their famous production of Our Town, which is great. Is that coming back again soon?
You know what? It's going to come back, and it's going to come back in the next couple of years, and it's going to come back as part of a big national tour, which we're calling the Your Town Tour. And the goal is that every single member of the cast will be from another town, and we will go, not only play it in Toronto, but we'll play it in the town of the 20 people. And it's the Our Town, Your Town Tour, so that's one of the big initiatives.
But so,
Good, eh?
that's great. So after having been revived and successfully mounted, this is the show you chose to open that beautiful facility. Have you all been down to the Young Center? Yeah, if not, go soon. It's a great space just to be. I love it. But opening night, tell the story.
So opening night, you know, it's a big night because it's opening. Now, we're not only opening a show, we're showing our audience this new home that we've created. And the home was created out of these beautiful red brick buildings. And we've kept the patina of these 150-year-old brick buildings in the spaces themselves. So very often a show will have a bare back wall and you'll see it. And the first time we did a show in the building, we wanted the building to be seen as well as the show. And that's why we chose Our Town, because as you know, Our Town has no set. So we had this big open space with nothing in it. And in the play, I play the stage manager, who is this sort of narrator of the piece. And according to the stage directions, he walks forward and he sort of stands and nods at the audience for the first 5 minutes. He just stands out there and he's a presence with the audience before. And then he looks at his watch and he says, all right, time to begin. And he goes out and he starts chatting with the audience. And on this occasion, the place is packed with all the people who have made it possible and all the families, and it's just jammed with excitement. And it's the opening night. Everyone's jammed in, and I'm standing on the stage as the stage manager, just barely staying on top of my emotions. And Jim Fleck, one of the great philanthropists in this country, Jim Fleck from about row H, gets sick of watching me for 3 minutes, and he says, "Yay, Albert." Which begins, now meanwhile the cast, I'm about to start, and the whole cast is on the other side of the brick wall, through a little door on the other side of the brick wall, and there's a monitor there, and they're waiting for a particular cue to come out. And they hear, "Yay, Albert." They're all backstage here chatting, getting ready, and this voice says, "Yay, Albert," and then an ovation begins that goes on for about 3 minutes. A very, you were there, very loud, extremely moving for me ovation. And what I'm directed by Joe Ziegler to do at the top of the play is, once I see it's time, to go back and to place my hand on the brick wall and then wipe the brick dust off my hand as I move forward to the audience and say, the name of this play is Our Town. This play is called Our Town? That's it. It was a long time ago. And so after the play, and I finally decided I have to, at some point, I'm going to have to break this. So I just smiled and I nodded after taking it for about 2 minutes. And I turned upstage and I slowly walked up, and I could feel people start to sit, and I put the hand on the wall and I took a breath. And then I walked back and they were sitting and smiling, and I started the play. What I learned later was that behind the stage, when the commotion was heard, they looked at the monitor and they saw what was going on. And Diego said to the 20 assembled, "Everybody, get your hands ready." And everyone knew what it meant. And they all ran to the other side of the brick. And they watched the monitor. And as my hand went up, they went on the brick on the other side of the wall. Now, had I seen that, I would have been useless for the rest of the night. But they were all there. And that moment of the full company feeling that wall together, and me representing that audience and them representing that, and through that brick wall, and then starting our life in that building is a pretty
and
great.
it's been a pretty terrific 10 years in that building for you
Yes.
and everybody. So thank you. Now, we have the pleasure of opening the floor to questions. So please take yourself over to the microphone if you have a question you'd like to ask Albert.
You mentioned the importance of giving young people an opportunity. A young relative of mine is in the graduating class at the University of Windsor theater program, and she recently took part in a group audition
Yes?
sponsored by Soulpepper, is that correct?
Ish, yes.
Could you say something about the part that Soulpepper plays in
Yeah,
this sort of thing?
So what that was the Theatre Ontario auditions. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So basically, this is something that's been going on for about 20 years, where Theatre Ontario, which is a service organization, has the graduating classes of all the theatre schools audition for the profession. So they come to Toronto and they audition for artistic directors and agents, etc. And it's been going on for years. And it was Derek Boys, who's one of our resident artists, and I call him the minister of community there. He's just the most amazing guy who's always thinking of ways to make the world and our world a better place. And it was Derek who said, this Theatre Ontario thing is not good. It's good, but it's not good. We got to find a way, because they would do it at the Jane Mallett Theatre, which had no resident company. No one had any connection to it. No one watching you felt at home. And so people would come and go, and and they'd be shoved, and the only person they would see is the crew person who would say, over there. So Derek said, I want to make this, I want to have these young people, because these are presumably the graduating classes of all the theatre schools in Canada. This is the future here. I want their first experience in Toronto to be an experience of belonging. And so we turned this thing, which was just trot out, do your thing, and nervously leave. And we set up, for the last 2 years now, we do the same thing. They come and they do it. But we set up, we have all of our resident artists there. Every class goes away and has a conversation. After they do their thing, they go and they meet with artists and have a talk about the business. We have a party. We throw a party at our expense, and so that we bring all of our artists and all of the new artists, and we invite the theater community down so that they have a part. There they are from, Gravelbourg, Saskatchewan, out of the University of Windsor, and they go there and they're hanging out with people who work in the business, and they're having a drink so that's an example of the taking an idea and pushing it through our community or belonging filter and turning it into, that's a Theatre Ontario event now that has a Soulpepper spin.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Next.
Gravelbourg, Saskatchewan. I've been there. Albert, thank you for tonight.
Thank you.
I could listen to you for hours.
Stick around. I'm not leaving.
But I understand that you have a new career as a jazz singer.
Oh.
Yeah. I wondered if you were going to sing tonight.
Oh, well. I won't sing tonight, but keep your ear to the ground, because, yes, when I turned 50 last year, I thought to myself, what can I do? And it kind of as a birthday present to myself. What can I do that'll be fun, but also will reflect, and we haven't talked about this, perhaps the greatest artistic influence on my life. And that's Francis Albert Sinatra. When I was 15 years old, I heard my first recording, and it kind of began to change my life. So I had John Gielgud's recordings, I had Sinatra's recordings, and my life is a dichotomy between the two. I created a show called Frankly, Sinatra, which I did in my hometown of Port Hope last year. I wanted to start it in my hometown, so I did that in my hometown. I'm taking it to Chester, Nova Scotia this year. I just did a chunk of it at Hughes Room, and it's going to come to Soulpepper in the fall. But it won't be announced probably till May. Okay. And we'll do it, and it's basically, it's not me imitating Sinatra, it's me sharing with you songs that Sinatra shared with you, but essentially it's about me telling you stories and contextualizing his life, and it's very much my life because it's me contextualizing it, but it seems to work. People seem to love it.
And this year is?
And he will turn 100 on December 13th this year, which is why we're doing it. So I think this show, and we're getting offers all over, so get in there now, folks.
Go. Any other questions? There? No?
Someone's got to have a question. Think one, no?
There's
one.
Many visual and performing arts organizations are founded by like-minded people, like Soulpepper, and many of them struggle with challenges, particularly funding, human resources, space, and so on. To what do you attribute the success of Soulpepper?
It's a very good question, and it's a very, I can't answer for sure. The success of Soulpepper is a combination of a few things. I think a lot of it is what Richard has touched on, and which doesn't get spoken of much, which is this notion of community. People actually, audiences and artists, actually love being there because they feel they're part of something. This is crucially important nowadays, that we feel part of something, and that we feel part of something amidst a crowd. I was just saying to someone today, we become a very secular society, on which I put absolutely no judgment, except it's a fact. That when we were a less secular society, we all, at least once a week, would commune. We would gather in whatever that house of worship or gathering was, and we would experience something together that was ritualistic and that reminded us that there is a whole that is greater than our individual parts. And that is what the theater at its best does. And if you can create a place where the artists and the audience feel that what they might not love everything they see, love everything they do, but if they feel that what they're doing tonight is connected to the people around them and that it's connected to what's happening next week and next month. And it's that connectivity that Soulpepper does, and that Soulpepper, I think, has an advantage of, and what we've gotten right is that, not to say anyone else has gotten wrong, but when you're talking about why have we been able to grow exponentially, why have we been able to, Soulpepper has the largest audience in the city now, significantly so. It's the largest employer of theater artists, and this is a fact of which I'm very proud. If you take any four, other than Soulpepper, any four theater companies in this city and add up all the work they give to theater artists, Soulpepper gives more to any four other. And that is the single biggest thing of which I'm proud, because that means that, like Penryn Park, the doors are wide open. It means that we can't, people will always say, and what I love is, and you can imagine this, as an artistic director, what I love is how many people say, Soulpepper's a closed shop. Okay, we give more work than any four combined, but it's a closed shop. Well, yeah, because only so many people can come in, and you have rules of excellence and various things. But you can, as much as you can. So that connectivity between people and that temporal connectivity, that this is part of a bigger whole, very, very important. And the other thing is that you need to be, in a crowded market, you need to be bold. You need to be bold, and you need to articulate boldness. And this is a thing that's tough for Canadians, and I think my heritage may have something to do with why it's not so hard for me. I didn't, my whole life isn't, I spent a lot of time around Americans. I don't know if that's the reason, but I think you're allowed to say, you should be allowed to say, this works and you should be part of it. This is good. Come down. We're going to make you feel good. This is important. We're going to change the world here. I make things, someone said to me the other day, just made fun of me because I was telling them about things coming up, and I use a lot of superlatives. It's important for Canadians that we learn to use superlatives about the things that are important to us. There you go, superlatives and connectivity.
And to wrap up, two things. One message for me. If you have not been to it yet, or if you've never been to Soulpepper yet, one of their finest productions ever, Spoon River, is coming back in March. Mm-hmm. And it's fine, not just because it's a wonderful evening in the theater, but everything Albert said about community is there, outreach is there, and also I found it probably the most profoundly spiritual thing I've been to in theater in a long time. It's not religious, it's spiritual, and you'll know that. So check it out. The last thing...
Can I speak to that really quickly? Do we have time to speak to that? Because here's something interesting, because of this conversation, and I thank you, Richard, for it, because there are things in this conversation I've never talked about. But I, as you know, I was responsible for it. So Mike Ross wrote this amazing music, and the poems existed there. My job was to frame it, to take the raw material and turn it into a show and to create a framing device. And that opening homily started out, it literally, my first, that framed the whole thing, and the ritual that framed the whole thing of a funeral, I was originally going to draw directly from the Episcopalian, the American version of the Anglican prayer book. I was going to use the evensong poem that I've already quoted you, "Lighten our darkness, we beseech thee, O Lord." I was going to create, and then as I got deeper into the play and researched more and realized, remember the line in Our Town when the stage manager says, it's like what one of those Middle West poets said, you got to love life to have life, and you got to have life to love life. Well, one of those Middle West poets was Edgar Lee Masters, and that is a line that's cribbed and slightly changed from the Spoon River anthology. And as I was going through, I realized, no, for me, all I can do is the spiritual aspect of that show can only be what I find spiritually important. And for me, part of that was based in the church, but now is no longer based in the church. It's based in a kind of humanism. So at the end, what I ended up was writing a piece that owed a great deal to Wilder, but owed a great deal to to kind of the greatest of secular humanism, that allows us to celebrate, to be truly and almost religiously spiritual in our celebration of our own life. And you choose what you want to attach to that. But that's great. Is very much what Spoon.
And the very last thing, and I hope you can quote it properly, and I won't be embarrassed, to tie all this together, the next time if you go into the theaters at Soulpepper, as you're about to walk into, if you're in the big space, there's a little sign on the wall about the origins of the place. He didn't know I was going to ask him this. You know what I'm talking about.
I do. And the easiest way to see is when you walk out, it's on the pillar that faces you. And the story behind that is one of our most generous donors, the Donald and Gretchen Ross, who were friends of my father's, and they've been with us all along. They do extraordinary things all over the city. They're just amazing people. They didn't want their names on anything. They wanted this to be said. And on a pillar outside of the thing, instead of having Donald and Gretchen Ross gave money to this building, it says something like, "This is dedicated to the memory of A.B. Peter Schultz, an historian, a conservationist, and an architectural preservationist. His passions inspired his son."
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.